So good morning. I was going to introduce myself as Pastor Steve Gidon, sorry, but Michael already stole my thunder. So I'm from here at Mount Pleasant. And I just wanted to start with just a bit of information about my pathway to becoming chair of the missions committee here. So Steve and I went to Haiti the last time he was able to go, which was in 2019. And we had a lot of time in airports, but more specifically on the compound of the orphanage where he has developed long-standing relationships with the folks there. We'd sit under the mango tree in the dead dog heat of noon and the hot hours, and we had just a lot of time to talk. And I asked him a lot of questions about, we talked first about missions, what are we doing here in Haiti? There is such a vast sea of needs around us, and what does missions, look like in Haiti? Well, how do we effectively be here and share our faith here? And would it have been better, we asked ourselves at one point, for us to just donate our ticket money to the orphanage, because literally those boys were eating once a day. And I mean, there was repairs that needed to be done. I mean, it just goes on and on. We asked ourselves, what do you think is the impact on these children of us being here? What's the impact of our being here on the staff? We drove around the city and with Pastor Bato, and what do you think the Haitians think? Because there are not that many white people in Haiti. What do they think when they see us driving around? So we asked all these questions of what does it mean to be effectively doing missions here? And then I also asked him about Mount Pleasant, because I was relatively new here at the time. And I said, how is it? I'm Mennonite by heritage and upbringing, and we felt very, very welcome. My mother was a Methodist. We felt very welcome here in this church, but don't know as much about John Wesley and all the things the Methodists know. And so I said, well, how is it here at this church that some things, some projects, some initiatives get airtime, get pulpit time, get recognized, and others don't? How is it that certain initiatives, all good ways to help, what's the process by which initiatives are chosen for us to rally around and support, but others aren't? So he had some answers for that, and we had some thoughts about that. But let's fast forward to today. And I guess the moral of the story is, if anyone ever tells you it never hurts to ask, do not believe them, or you might find yourself in my situation here today in front of you. So, so it's been some time since you've had an update from missions, and the buck stops here. That's been primarily my responsibility, and I apologize for not keeping you informed. I could use COVID as an excuse, and we certainly know that, COVID changed the way we all did everything. I felt stymied at times because many of the actions that we were going to do as a committee, we had action plan and activities we were going to do, I felt stymied because so many of them involved interactions with people. And when we were dreaming about these things, we were not thinking 6 feet apart. So, it was easy for me to get kind of bogged down and to think, what is it that we can do? But thanks to some of the committee members who I work with who were able to think out of the box, we were able to do a few things. And you might recall, I'm sure you recall, when we asked you to help us with a COVID response for 2 populations, the the frontline staff at Camden, who were on COVID units, who were in the emergency room, and who were facing daily harm on our behalf, and then also the teachers at Mineral Well schools. We asked you for help, and your response was extremely generous. We were able to provide pizza for the teachers at school, and then some care baskets for staff at the hospital who literally, we heard, were not able to get breaks to eat. And so your generosity was overwhelming. The responses from these places was very gracious. So thank you. And I know there aren't a lot of children here today, but a special thanks to the children who made cards for the hospital staff that we tucked in the baskets. And, you know, I thought about what a delight it would have been for some of the medical staff to, in the middle of all that sadness and chaos, to see kids' art, and a thank you from children. So thanks to you kids for doing that. So we're here to talk about missions. Let's get started. First slide, please. So here, this picture, I just want to say, is one of Jeff and Melanie's. They go to Zimbabwe every year when they can. And this is located, this iconic symbol of the United Methodist Church sits on the grounds of Africa University, which was founded by the United Methodist Church in the 70s, and it's all on the same mission complex as the old Mutare United Methodist Mission, which is where they go when they go to Zimbabwe. And I was thinking about that icon, and what a welcoming sight for Methodists traveling around the world to see such a familiar icon, as Michael was saying, halfway around the globe. What a sign of unity for folks traveling. So why are we here today? Why are you here today? Clearly, COVID changed our timetables, changed our agenda, but still, Mission Committee, we wanted to give you an update and an invitation and a challenge. First of all, your tithe is supporting missions in this church, and you deserve an update about where your money is going. We want to invite you to get involved. We realize you cannot be involved if you don't know what's happening in this church, and I have heard more than a few people say when we're talking about a new initiative, well, I didn't know anything about that. I wish I would have known about it. And so that's probably my responsibility, that we have not done a good job of letting you know what's going on. But most important to me, I think, and to our committee, is that we want to challenge you today. I want you to think with me about the obvious, very obvious question. Why is it important for this church to do missions? To think about why, not just what and how. Why is it important for us to do missions? I'm going to start a little bit more with the challenge first, and I'm going to drill down a little deeper. Why do you, individual you, not corporate you, not our church, but why do you volunteer for mission activities when they come around? When the Florida team came, why did you volunteer? When the food pantry has a need for volunteers, why do you sign up? So here's some reasons that some people have told me that they like to get involved, not necessarily here, but in general. I'm a compassionate person, and I want to help others. Okay. It's a constructive outlet for my boredom. Yeah, it is. It's a way to spend time with my friends, go hang out at a building site, work, get something done, make somebody else, make their home better. Okay. I feel like I need to give my time to somebody who is less fortunate because I have so much. All right. Possibly guilt reduction. So the challenge here, one of the challenges is, if the main motivation for you and for me is to do those things because it makes you feel good or makes you feel better, it makes me feel better, me feel less guilty, whatever, I think it's a fair question to say, well, then who are you doing it for? Who are you doing missions for if you do it because it makes you feel good? So, and if any of those reasons that I mentioned are reasons that you volunteer, let's take it a step further. You can accomplish all of those things by signing on with the Rotary Club, who I looked it up. They're a non-political, non-religious humanitarian organization who strive to provide service to others, promote integrity, and advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace. That is awesome. Those are awesome things, okay? Or why not sign up with the Kiwanis Club, whose motto is to serve the children of the world? Great. We're trying to focus on children's ministries here too. Lions Club provides new eyes for the needy. And Steve put one out there a couple weeks ago. I think his mother was involved with the Garden Club. Sorry, I don't know what their motto is. But I think that we can all agree that we can do awesome things through those organizations. Many of you may belong to them. It's not a criticism of those organizations. And you know, there are so many more local, international, regional ways to get involved. Ways to help are endless. So we struggled with those questions as a mission committee. We struggled a lot. What does it mean to extend yourself to your neighbor, to people in Haiti, to people at the southern border? What does that mean? We asked we asked each other, and we said, if we're going to do these things in the name of Mount Pleasant United Methodist Church, how do we craft a response to need in a way that lines up with our faith and sets us apart from other organizations who we all agree do good things? I'm going to say that again. The question was, how do we craft our response as a congregation, our response to the needs we see, in a way that lines up with our faith and sets us apart from other organizations who do good things? So we decided we needed to search for some answers, better answers. We looked at the series When Helping Hurts. Some of you are familiar with that. But we also leaned into John Wesley. And I see that Steve has put some of his thoughts in the bulletin about John Wesley's approach to mission, and that's all there for your reference. But John Wesley, who is as good Mennonites, you all know who he is. I don't need to do any background there. But he suggested that effective Christian outreach should be personal. Missions is about people, not projects. Many of you have probably worked on project development, and you know there's a formula and there's a code, and you look at averages and you come up with a strategy that works for most people. But missions, at its best, is not about those strategies. It's about people. We're interacting in missions with human beings, each of whom are different, have a different story, have a different faith journey. One size does not fit all. Wesley also was really hammered in on we need to, when we reach out to people in the name of Christ, we need to do it with dignity. And I think the importance of this has come home. We heard a few years ago from somebody who came to talk to us here at this church about people who have been recipients of help, have had to ask for help because of hard times in their life. And I remember the woman talking about how ashamed she felt that she was in the situation where she could not help herself and she had to ask for help. And we also had an experience in Haiti that I wanted to briefly share. Jim and I did work and learn teams in Haiti about half the time we were there, and we brought work teams from other countries and matched them up with work teams in Haiti, and we literally did manual rubble removal, bucket brigades, because so many of the houses were built on mountains and they all crashed, and there's it's a very manual society. So we would have these work teams, we would match up the international team with the Haitian team, and we would set aside a time to talk. Usually coffee break and lunch. And I remember one of the first teams we led was a team from North America. I can't remember if it was the US or Canada, and one of the guys asked the Haitians, because lots of relief was flooding in to Haiti, and much of it was, funds were misappropriated. But he said, "What do you want from us as Americans, as North Americans? What do you want?" And there was a pause, and one young woman spoke up, and she answered his question in one word. She said, respect. Some of them were homeless, living in tents, had many people eat once a day. She said, we want respect. I will never forget that. Is it effective ministry if people feel ashamed or disrespected because they have required help? Wesley also felt that we should strive to help people develop their God-given gifts. We shouldn't do things for them that they can do for themselves. And finally, we should seek to understand before we respond. That's a huge one. How many of us have looked at a situation and decided, well, we know what you need. This is what you need. That's a very common mistake, but it's a very biased mistake. We don't know what people need unless we listen. I was thinking this morning as I was preparing for this that I read a book once it was just a, not at all a religious book, but there was a psychologist, and somebody was commenting about the psychologist that the statement was she could listen the ears off of a brass monkey. And that to me was a really good picture of what it means to listen, listening the ears off of a brass monkey. We need to listen to people and then respond. And in responding, we need to consider, of course, not just the physical needs, but their emotional and spiritual brokenness as well. We're not just physical people, we're emotional, mental, and spiritual beings. And failure to respond to people as spiritual beings who need God's redeeming love as much as we do has the potential to make our efforts no different than any of the clubs that I mentioned above. So in preparing for this, over the last week or so, I was reading in Mark 8:36, and I kind of saw it through different eyes. The verse is, what does it profit someone to gain the whole world and forfeit his life? Whatever else this verse speaks to, I really believe that it can speak to our incomplete efforts when we work to restore people's physical comfort, restore their livelihood, restore their homes, all good things, while ignoring the needs of their souls. So our committee, we decided as we met, and this took a while, that if we were going to call what we do missions or outreach in the name of Christ, we want to work to avoid a one-size-fits-all strategy, like handing out money when we don't know the person attached to the hand, or giving things to people when we don't, and disregarding the health of the whole person, including their spiritual health. We wanted to think creatively about how we can welcome those who we are touching into our midst and encourage them to come to our or another faith community where enduring spiritual emptiness can be healed. We wanted to craft a response where people would, in the process of knowing us, could be invited into a faith community where spiritual emptiness could be addressed. So if you notice, none of these things that we've talked about here are quick. None of them are simple. So in summary, we came up with these criteria or values for what we believe missions should be at Mount Pleasant. We decided that our initiative should be relationship-based, not harmful to one's dignity, and inviting so that people are pointed toward a redemptive relationship with God and a redemptive faith community where all seek to continually grow nearer to God. So in his sermon last week, Steve mentioned, he made the comment that God goes into barren places to create new life. That really caught my attention. God goes into barren places to create new life. I think that's missions at its best. And this morning in our Sunday school class, which you're all invited to join downstairs, Melanie played a song for us, and one of the lines popped out to me. All the dark in the world cannot stop God's light from getting through. If we look at the darkness of the people around us in terms other than spiritual, we are giving people a partial message of redemption. So this is tough stuff, I agree. I want to go on record here as saying that, we bump into contradictions. People are difficult. We're difficult sometimes. We say we want to avoid simple monetary contributions. When some of the literature in some places has suggested that when people are goal-driven and they know what their purpose is, really what they need is a means to get started. And so sometimes the monetary contributions are the thing to do. We say we want to listen and build relationships before we respond, yet it's understood that in disaster situations, emergency situations such as the flood you all had here a while back, situations require us to act quickly to help the vulnerable, people who are strangers. We say we want to avoid doing things for people if they can do it themselves, but we all know at times in our lives we're broken. Things we know how to do, we can't do. And so partnering up and accompanying with somebody during a time of brokenness and helping them do something they know how to do may be the right thing to do. So while our guidelines are not perfect, they did offer us some help in deciding how to proceed when choosing initiatives. When, of course, we're surrounded by so many opportunities to help. One of the things I want to say before I just get into the specific missions that we're highlighting today is that part of our job, too, is awareness raising. We want to help increase awareness by learning about what United Methodist Church is doing elsewhere. We had some visits planned over the last year and a half, and those didn't happen. The 6-foot rule again, was a partial stopper there. But that is part of our role to increase awareness about what's going on, what the United Methodist Church is doing elsewhere. And I feel passionately about this one, and Steve mentioned it last week too, I think, is that we're part of a global community, a global Christian community. And we want to be bold in our desire to increase awareness of the disparity of resources and agency in our global community. Whether that disparity exists here in West Virginia, the southern border, in Africa. God willing, this fall we'll try to host an activity where it'll bring home to whoever signs up what that disparity feels like. What does it feel like when you have nothing and somebody else has a lot? And I even address the question, does it even matter to us as Christians? Does it matter that we have a lot when others don't have? Why should it matter? So back to the 5 outreach initiatives that we're highlighting today. I'm going to say one more thing about Haiti here. And back when we lived there, the pastors were very animated, very, very animated. Some people who are not used to animated preaching would say, I get tired of being yelled at when I go to church, and it was just very. So once in a while they did this thing, to their congregations. They'd say, Nula, Nula. That meant, are you here? And I debated, I may at some point, if I see too many yawns out there, I might yell at you, Nula, and then you can just say the answer is the same 2 words, oui, Nula. So, okay, just giving you a warning. But so these are the 5. These are the 5 initiatives that we're highlighting today. And I want to say here clearly, these are not ranked in order of importance. They're ranked in order of how the information came to us. And at this moment, I want to give a shout out to Peggy Griegel, who put together this PowerPoint. That was clearly a skill I did not have, and she worked tirelessly to do this and kind of helped. We worked together in matching what I was going to say with with the PowerPoint. But the order is kind of how the information came in. And then also a comment about our international ministries, that we are very fortunate that we have strong relationships in both of those countries, and that there are we can join Christian communities when we go there. And they help us live out our faith in new ways. In terms of international ministries, I just wanted to add a note that unfortunately, because of just ongoing financial, economic, political crises in both Zimbabwe and in Haiti, we are often have felt somewhat frustrated, but it seems like we're often responding to them out of crises or in their crises, and that just seems to be kind of the way it is right now. But let's start with Steve has gone to, this is an orphanage in Bon Repos. He started going there in 2010. He said initially he went for cultural immersion and as a spiritual retreat, but over time has built relationships with the Haitians who experience God's presence in new and delightful ways. I went once with him before we've been kind of shut out because of the trouble. He comments that the poverty of the Haitian people, coupled with their energy, has been a really cleansing effect can have a cleansing effect on our North America spirituality, which often seems based on prosperity and convenience. The support there goes to the Bon Repos orphanage. There's also a very basic school in the mountains of Des Bois Rouges. It's a hike up the mountain, and they typically spend the night up there and then come down. And then there's other Haitians in the spiritual family that are supported. This is a new one that we supported this year. This project initiative, Jacques Louis Jeune is the man in the suit. He goes by Junior. He's one of two agronomists that feel called to address malnutrition in the context of severe unemployment in Haiti. And he's specifically concerned about, if you can see the picture at the very top, he and I are standing. There's a lake behind us. He particularly feels called to help a small community that has no road access to it. They have to come in dugouts across the lake. And because there's no road access to it and it's really cut off, many of the young people have left. And so it tends to be older people and younger people that are still there. And there's a lot of malnutrition and a lot of need there. If you can see too, there's a mountain behind on the sides of the lake. The steep terrain there makes agriculture difficult, and so people really have a hard time maintaining livelihoods. But his goal is to raise tilapia, and there's some fish in the bottom corner. Raise tilapia in netted cages in the local lake, and then sell the fish at the market, and then give part of the proceeds to this community in Blanchard. Unfortunately, again, they've had, I don't know, many of you are aware there was an earthquake again in middle of August this year. For some reason, this area was hit very hard. The lake flooded, and they lost the fish house where they do the weighing station for the fish. And so he was despairing that, it's just been another setback for them. Actually, the flood was from the hurricane that came through it a few days after the earthquake, which you probably heard about too. But in any case, he was very, very thrilled for the money that Mount Pleasant sent to try to move this project along, and wanted me to express my gratitude to you. Jeff and Melanie have gone to Zimbabwe. Melanie's been there twice. Jeff has gone since 2012. And their goal is to collaborate and learn from each other and build relationships with the people there. When visiting, their focus is to talk with the people who live there, ask them to identify their needs, and then try to assist them in meeting the goals. Local resources are used if at all possible, but if not, they assist them in accessing resources. The mission station, the flag in the beginning of the presentation was of the university that's on the same compound, but then there is also church, hospital, children's home, primary and secondary schools. And my memory is that when COVID first went through their area, they lost some really key players for the children's home, which was a real blow, and a real leaders in the children's home ministry, which was a real blow to them. Our church also has a covenant relationship with Dr. Menyeza, who once worked here and provided medical services here, but has since been transferred to Sierra Leone. He's been working there for, I think, the last 4 years. So some of the efforts, the collaborative efforts that they have done there in Zimbabwe, providing and installing solar water heaters to provide hot water to the hospital and children's houses. And and Jeff told a story about, when they went in, they had pity on the kids. They wanted to put solar water heaters in so the kids could have warm showers. And because they didn't ask, Jeff said this, I didn't say this, but because they didn't ask first, they didn't know the hospital didn't have any hot water. And so when they learned that the hospital hadn't had any hot water for 20 years, they immediately, of course, helped purchase and install solar water heaters in the hospital, and the first unit where they were put in was the maternity unit so that mothers could have a warm shower after they had birthed their children. They also have helped provide and install those solar cookers that look like satellite dishes. They have one in each children's house, and they have helped with teaching building skills so that repair can be done, continue to be done after they leave. And in this picture, you may see Stephen Bailey. It's kind of hard to see him, but he has accompanied the Mathenis on their trips in the past and has been particularly helpful in, as you know, many of you know, he's a builder and a contractor, and so he's been really instrumental in that. One of their other focuses is trying to help bring in or acquire equipment for the hospital. And one of Melanie's stories that I found really interesting was the last time that she went. She is a nurse practitioner and very generous, and she put stuff in her backpack that she had planned to either use or maybe to do some health screenings, and otoscope and stethoscope and gloves and a variety of other things. And she later learned that she had more equipment in her backpack than the hospital had in their hospital. And she, of course, being the generous soul she is, donated everything she had. But what a stark comparison to our hospital visits when we go. And the next mission initiative is our food pantry. It's currently under the leadership of Pam Fout. It's gone through quite a few transitions over the last year or so in terms of leadership. The mission for the food pantry is to feed those in crisis and those who need help. Goal is helping clients with food to nourish their body and soul and to build relationships with them. We've had a big reduction in the number of visitors to the food pantry over the last while, and the belief is that at least part of this is because of COVID and the stimulus checks that people have received, and also that they have received extra money on their food cards, so they have been able to function a bit more independently from us. So because we have fewer clients, our hours have temporarily been reduced. We're now only open Fridays from 10 to 12, but there is emergency food available when the need arises. And it is really important that our volunteers know our clients. They do know them right now, and so those relationships, are important to the food pantry program. Prior to COVID, we were brainstorming with some ways to try to develop more meaningful relationships with the people that come to the food pantry, and thinking about ways we could, maybe perhaps have some little mini workshops with them, talk to them about lifestyle. Some people aren't really familiar with cooking in such a way to save money. We had some good ideas, but they involved bringing people into the church, and then of course none of us were in the church either for a while. So we hope to be able to get back to that at some point. We also have the Sack Pack program, which is currently under the leadership of Jody Lockhart. United Methodist Church Mount Pleasant has been in a very close partnership with the Sack Pack program for some time. The mission is to reduce food insecurity and provide meals to children in our community. And I think I neglected to give you the definition of food insecurity. I wanted to do that. The USDA defines food insecurity as lack of consistent access to enough food for an active, healthy life. And I'd also neglected to say that in Haiti, they suggest 42% of the Haitian population of 11 million experience food insecurity. It's a lot of people. So the issue of food insecurity comes up again in the Sack Pack program, and we recognize that there are people in our community who also experience food insecurity, and providing meals to the children, breakfast, lunch, and a snack that kids can expected that they can make for themselves over the weekend is what the goal is. It's the food is discreetly distributed to children at the end of the school week, and again, the food is shelf stable, so it can be easily managed by the children. And this program is entirely supported by this congregation and donations from the community, which allows it to be free for both the school and the kids. During COVID, starting in February 2021, they only had 10 kids in the Sack Pack program. When we start back up this year, when we're able to, we hope to have an increased need for volunteers to help Jody work in that program. Our newest mission initiative is Faith Link. Goldsworthy is our contact person for that. This program begins, and Faith Link has now developed services such as shopping, light housekeeping, escorted transportation to help people get to medical appointments, and volunteers are matched up with the people that have those needs, and therefore these people are more able to stay in their homes. This is again a new partnership with us, and we are looking both for volunteers to serve as somebody providing these services, but we also are aware that in our own congregation we may have individuals who could use this service. We'd like to, this is a Mid-Ohio Valley service, but it offers the opportunity to develop relationships with people and have more in-depth conversations with them, and so we really encourage you, if you're interested, to get in touch with Cindy or the contact person, Melissa. Her number is up here as well. Also, I learned in discussing this that our lovely Pearl used to volunteer for them, so she could provide probably some hands-on advice for anybody who wants to take this on. So I have focused here on 5 mission initiatives today. There's a new one, Loads of Love, that's in the planning and development stage. So stay tuned for more information about that. Kids Hope, as you know, is under Kristen Parrish's leadership, but it's currently on hold just because of the issues with COVID. But it is something, that our church has actively supported and has some interest both to children ministries, but also missions, because once again, we were exploring ways that we may be able, as a congregation, to develop relationships with these families. Of course, it wouldn't be at school. We'd have to figure out ways to do that, but thereby get to know, develop relationships with these kids that are targeted by the school as perhaps needing some academic and friendship help. I want to say here that there are other ministries that people in our church touch. Some are championed by individuals. In fact, Mary Jane Carter asked me today to let you know that the fundraising for Women's Care Center is starting today. She's put some bottles out in the narthex, and this church has done this before. If you have any more specific questions about where that money goes to or the timeline that she needs that money back, I think it's on the 19th, you could talk with her. So again, there are other ministries that are championed by individuals or other groups of individuals. They're all worthwhile ministries. In a generous congregation like you, a lot of giving happens, which is a blessing. But we have focused today on the ministries that we feel align with our church's larger vision, building disciples for Jesus, and are consistent with the criteria that we talked about earlier. We strongly believe, as a committee, that if we're going to be effective in missions, we have to choose. We cannot and will not be able to support everything. So we need to define, first of all, what are we as a church trying to do? What makes us different than the Lions Club? What are we trying to do? And I believe we're trying to invite people into a redemptive relationship with God. And then we want to choose mission initiatives that allow for the relationship building and the dignity granting that getting to know somebody allows us to do. So, his missions for you. Missions is a chance to step out of your shoes and into the shoes of someone else. It's a chance to first understand before responding. And it's a chance after hearing and building a relationship with someone to engage somebody who is seeking help in a conversation about your faith, and talk with them